She traded her Hermes bags for worn sneakers and her penthouse view for a cramped apartment in La Boca, but Valentina Mendoza never expected that losing everything fake would help her find something real. The crystal chandelier cast rainbow fractals across the marble floor of the Mendoza mansion as Valentina stared out at the sprawling gardens of Recoleta. 26 years old, and she could count her real friends on one hand, if she was being generous. The morning's newspaper lay folded beside her untouched Café Cortadou, its headline screaming about her father's latest billion-peso acquisition. Mendoza Holdings expands empire. Argentina's richest family grows fortune. She traced her finger along the cool marble of the breakfast table, each vein in the stone probably worth more than most Buenos Aires families earned in a year. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she sat, surrounded by everything money could buy, yet starving for the one thing it couldn't purchase. Señorita Valentina, called Carmen, the housekeeper who'd practically raised her after her mother's death 15 years ago. Your father wishes to see you in his study. Eduardo Mendoza stood behind his mahogany desk like a general surveying his empire. Maps of Argentina dotted with red pins marking his properties covered one wall, while floor-to-ceiling windows offered a commanding view of the Rio de la Plata. Valentina, mi amor, I have wonderful news. His weathered hands gestured toward a leather chair. The Herrera family has expressed interest in a union between you and their son, Santiago. You remember Santiago, Harvard-educated, runs their shipping division. Her stomach clenched. Santiago Herrera, perfectly pressed suits, perfectly empty conversations, and a perfectly calculated interest in her trust fund. Papa, I'm not a business merger. You're my only heir, Mija. Everything I've built will be yours someday. Don't you want someone who understands that world? Who can help you navigate it? The weight of expectation pressed down on her shoulders like the humid Buenos Aires summer air. She loved her father fiercely, but his love came wrapped in golden chains. I need some air, she whispered, fleeing to the sanctuary of her bedroom. Standing before her walk-in closet, larger than most apartments, Valentina felt the familiar suffocation creep up her throat. Designer dresses hung in perfect rows, each one a costume for the performance of being Eduardo Mendoza's daughter. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through Instagram, photos of her at charity galas, arm in arm with people whose names she knew but hearts she didn't. The comments made her skin crawl. Goals. Marry me, Valentina. Must be nice being rich AF. Daddy's money princess. Her reflection stared back from the full-length mirror, elegant, polished, hollow. When was the last time someone had looked at her and seen Valentina, not a bank account with legs? That evening, she stood on her private balcony overlooking Puerto Madero's glittering skyline. The tango music drifted up from the street level, where couples danced with a passion she'd never felt. Her phone buzzed with another message from Santiago, suggesting dinner at the most expensive restaurant in Palermo. But her eyes were drawn to La Boca in the distance, where colorful houses crowded together like a vibrant, chaotic embrace. Real families lived there. Real people who loved without spreadsheets and prenups. An idea began forming, dangerous and thrilling. What if she could disappear? What if Valentina Mendoza simply didn't exist for a while? What if she could discover whether anyone could love the woman behind the fortune? She thought of her cousin Maria, studying abroad, whose small apartment in La Boca sat empty. She thought of the savings account she'd kept secret, filled with money earned from the small freelance graphic design work she did under pseudonym. The plan crystallized like morning frost on the pampas. Tomorrow, Valentina Mendoza would disappear, and someone new would be born. 3 weeks later, Valentina barely recognized herself in the cracked mirror of the tiny La Boca apartment. Gone were the silk blouses and Italian leather shoes. In their place, faded jeans from a second-hand shop, canvas sneakers with worn soles, and a simple white t-shirt that had cost less than her usual morning coffee. She told her father she needed time to find herself, a half-truth that had earned her a month of freedom before the Santiago situation required an answer. Carmen thought she was staying at a friend's estancia in the countryside. The perfect lie. Her new identity was simple: Valentina Silva, a struggling graphic designer sharing a cramped apartment with her cousin, actually Maria Subletta, who'd been paid handsomely to disappear for a month. She dyed her honey blonde hair to a rich chocolate brown and traded her designer contacts for thick-rimmed glasses that made her look studious rather than socialite. The morning sun painted the colorful houses of Caminito in brilliant hues as she walked to her new job, barista at Café Luna, a tiny corner establishment that served the working families of the neighborhood. Her hands, once soft from weekly manicures, now bore small cuts from learning to operate the temperamental espresso machine. "Buenos dias, Valin," called Senora Rodriguez from across the street, hanging laundry on her balcony. The casual abbreviation of her name made her heart skip. When had anyone ever called her just Valin? The cafe's owner, Jorge, was a kind man in his 60s who'd hired her despite her obvious inexperience. "Everyone deserves a chance to start over," he'd said with a knowing smile that made her wonder if her disguise was as perfect as she'd hoped. The morning rush was beginning. Dock workers, teachers, shop clerks, all people living honest lives with genuine purpose. She fumbled with the steam wand, creating more noise than foam, when the bell above the door chimed. "Permiso," came a warm baritone voice. "Could I get a cortado and one of those media lunas that smell like heaven?" She looked up and nearly dropped the metal pitcher. The man standing before her was nothing like the polished executives from her father's world. His dark hair was tousled from the morning breeze, and his white button-down shirt was rolled up to reveal forearms marked by honest work. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath, deep brown like Argentine chocolate, with laugh lines that suggested he smiled often and meant it. "Pardon," she stammered, "I'm still learning the machine. It might take a minute." "No problem. I'm Mateo." His smile was warm sunshine breaking through clouds. "You're new, right?" Jorge mentioned he hired someone to help with the morning rush. "Valentina. I mean, Valin." She cursed her nervousness. "Everyone calls me Valin." "Nice to meet you, Valin. I work at the community center down the street. We organize after-school programs for kids in the neighborhood. This cafe is my lifeline before the chaos begins." She watched him from the corner of her eye as she wrestled with the espresso machine. He greeted other customers by name, asked Senor Martinez about his grandson's soccer game, complimented Senora Lopez on her new haircut. This wasn't performance, it was genuine connection. When she finally managed to produce something resembling a cortado, her hands shook slightly as she handed it over. Their fingers brushed for just a moment, and she felt electricity shoot up her arm. "Gracias, Valin. See you tomorrow." She nodded, not trusting her voice. For the next hour, she couldn't focus on orders. Her mind kept drifting to Mateo's easy laugh, the way he'd listened, really listened, when Senora Lopez talked about her arthritis, how he'd automatically left exact change plus a generous tip without making a show of it. During her lunch break, curiosity led her to the community center. Through the window, she watched Mateo teaching a group of children to play guitar. His patience was infinite as he guided small fingers to find the right chords, his face lighting up when 8-year-old Sofia finally managed to strum Feliz Cumpleaños. "Here's something special, that one," said a voice behind her. She turned to find an elderly woman with kind eyes watching the scene with her. "I'm Elena, Sofia's grandmother. Mateo's been volunteering here for 3 years. Never misses a day, even when he's working 2 jobs to pay for his engineering degree. Buenos Aires needs more young people like him." That evening, Valentina sat in her tiny apartment, eating a simple meal of pasta with fresh tomatoes, food she'd prepared herself for the first time in her life. The silence was different here. In the mansion, quiet meant isolation. Here, it meant peace. Her phone buzzed with messages from her old world. Santiago asking about dinner, friends inviting her to exclusive parties, her father's assistant requesting her presence at a charity gala. She turned it off. Through her small window, she could see families gathering for dinner, children playing soccer in the narrow streets, neighbors chatting over fences. Real life. Messy, loud, beautiful real life. Tomorrow, she'd see Mateo again. The thought made her pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with possibility. For the first time in 26 years, Valentina Mendoza was excited about tomorrow, not because of what she owned, but because of who she might become. 2 months dissolved like sugar in Café Cortadou. Valentina had never imagined that waking up could feel like Christmas morning, but every day brought the anticipation of seeing Mateo smile, hearing his voice call out "Buenos dias, Valin," as he pushed through the cafe door at precisely 7:15 a.m. Their friendship had bloomed naturally, like the jacaranda trees that painted Buenos Aires purple each spring. After her shifts, she'd find excuses to walk past the community center. Sometimes he'd invite her in to help with art projects, her graphic design skills finally useful for something that mattered, creating colorful posters for reading programs and designing flyers for neighborhood events. "You're talented," he'd said one afternoon, watching her sketch cartoon characters for the children's library corner. "Have you thought about art school?" If only he knew she had a fine arts degree from Columbia gathering dust in her Recoleta mansion. Instead, she'd mumbled something about not having the money, hating how easily the lie rolled off her tongue. The deception was becoming a living thing, growing heavier each day. Every shared laugh, every meaningful conversation, every moment of genuine connection felt like it was built on quicksand. "Valin, you're distracted today," Jorge observed as she accidentally added salt instead of sugar to a customer's quarter-do. "Everything okay, Mija?" She was anything but okay. Last night, Mateo had walked her home after community center fundraiser, a modest affair with homemade empanadas and donated wine, nothing like the lavish galas she was accustomed to. But the joy had been real, infectious, beautiful. "I had the best time," he'd said at her apartment door, his hand brushing hers in the dim light of the hallway. "You know what I love about you, Valin? You see people. Really see them. Not many people have that gift." The irony had cut deep. She saw people because she'd spent her entire life being unseen herself, reduced to a bank account and a pedigree. "There's something about you," he continued, his voice soft in the Buenos Aires night. "Something. I can't quite put my finger on it. Like you understand things differently than most people." Her heart had hammered against her ribs. For one terrifying moment, she'd wanted to tell him everything. Instead, she'd kissed his cheek and fled inside. Now, 3 days later, she was paying the price for that cowardice. "Mateo hasn't been in," she mentioned casually to Jorge during the afternoon lull. "Ah, sigh. He mentioned his abuela needed surgery. He's been working double shifts at the construction site to pay for it." Jorge's expression grew serious. "That boy works himself to the bone for that family." Valentina's chest tightened. While she'd been playing pretend, Mateo was facing real problems with real consequences. She thought of the money sitting in her trust fund, more than enough to pay for 1,000 surgeries, and felt sick. That evening, she found herself standing outside the public hospital in San Telmo. The building was old, overcrowded, nothing like the private clinics where the wealthy sought treatment. Through the window, she spotted Mateo in the waiting room, his head in his hands, shoulders rigid with exhaustion. She almost walked away. What could she say? How could she comfort him without revealing who she really was? But then she remembered Elena's words about him being something special, and her feet carried her through the sliding doors. "Mateo." He looked up, and the relief in his eyes nearly undid her. "Valin? How did you?" "Jorge told me." She sat beside him on the uncomfortable plastic chair. "How is she?" "The surgery went well, but—" He rubbed his face with calloused hands. "The bills. Even with insurance, it's— I don't know how we're going to manage." Every instinct screamed at her to help. She could make one phone call, transfer money, solve this problem in minutes. Instead, she took his hand. "You'll figure it out. You always do." "Sometimes I wonder what it would be like," he said quietly, "to not have to choose between paying rent and buying medicine. To not have to work 3 jobs just to survive. Does that make me selfish?" "It makes you human." They sat in comfortable silence, her small hand encompassing his larger, work-roughened one. She studied the calluses on his fingers, evidence of honest labor, and felt ashamed of her own soft palms. "I should get back," he said eventually. "I have a night shift at the loading dock." "Mateo, wait." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Would you like to go out tomorrow? Properly, I mean. On a date." His smile could have powered the entire hospital. "I'd love to, but I can't afford anywhere nice enough for you." "What if I know a place? Somewhere special that doesn't cost anything?" Have you ever felt torn between helping someone you care about and protecting a secret that could change everything? What would you do in Valentina's situation? Let us know your thoughts. Welcome back, my incredible viewers. Your comments from the last video have been absolutely overwhelming. I can see how deeply you're all connecting with the story, and the theories you've been sharing are absolutely brilliant. Some of you are surprisingly close to the truth of what's coming next. But before we continue, don't forget to smash that like button if you're enjoying what you're seeing. Your support means the world to me and helps this channel grow. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss any of our uploads. We're building an amazing community here, and I don't want you to miss out on what's coming. And please, share this video with your friends, family, or anyone who would love this type of content. The more people we can bring into this community, the better it gets for everyone. Your engagement in the comments has been incredible, and I love reading every single one of your thoughts and theories. Keep them coming. Now, let's go in depth into the story. The next evening, Valentina led Matteo through the winding streets of San Telmo to a hidden rooftop she discovered during her weeks of exploration. It wasn't the manicured terraces of Puerto Modo, just an abandoned building's flat roof with a view of the city's chaotic beauty. "How did you find this place?" he asked, marveling at the panoramic view of Buenos Aires stretching endlessly in every direction. "I like to walk," she said simply, spreading the blanket she'd brought. "Sometimes the best places are the ones nobody thinks to look for." They shared wine from a plastic bottle and empanadas from the corner shop, food that cost less than one of her usual appetizers but tasted better than anything her private chef had ever prepared. "Tell me about your dreams," she said as the sun painted the sky in shades of rose and gold. "I want to finish my engineering degree and design affordable housing. Buenos Aires is growing so fast, but only the rich get to live in beautiful places. I want to change that." His eyes sparkled with passion. "What about you? What do you dream about?" The honest answer would have been, "I dream about being worthy of the love you might give me. I dream about deserving this moment." Instead, she said, "I dream about mattering. About making a difference." "You already do." He turned to face her fully. "You light up that cafe. You make Jorge smile every day. You helped little Sofia with her reading, and now she won't stop talking about her friend Valin. You matter more than you know." As the stars emerged over the city, Matteo leaned closer. "There's something I need to tell you." Her breath caught. Had he figured it out? "I'm falling for you," he whispered. "Completely, terrifyingly falling for you. I know I don't have much to offer." She silenced him with a kiss, tasting hope and fear and something that might have been destiny. When they broke apart, tears streamed down her cheeks. "Why are you crying?" "Because I'm falling too," she whispered. "And I'm terrified you'll stop when you really know me." "Never," he said firmly. "Whatever secrets you think you're hiding, whatever you think I might not understand, it doesn't matter. It's your heart I love, Valin. Everything else is just details." If only that were true. As he walked her home, their fingers intertwined, Valentina felt the weight of her deception growing unbearable. She was living on borrowed time, and eventually, all debts came due. But tonight, under the Buenos Aires stars, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a love that could survive anything, even the truth. 3 months into her double life, Valentina's world collided with the force of a Buenos Aires thunderstorm. It started with a phone call she couldn't ignore. Her father's voice crackled through the speaker, sharp with worry and barely contained anger. "Valentina, enough of this nonsense. The Herrera deal is falling apart, and Santiago is asking questions. You need to come home. Tonight." She stood on the small balcony of her La Boca apartment, watching Matteo teach children to play football in the street below. His laughter drifted up like music, and her heart clenched. "Papa, I told you." "I don't care what you told me. I know exactly where you are." Her blood turned to ice. "What? Did you think I'd let my only daughter disappear without keeping tabs? I've had security watching you for weeks. Playing house in La Boca, working in some greasy cafe, dating a construction worker." His voice dripped disdain. "This fantasy ends now." The phone slipped from her numb fingers. Below, Matteo looked up and waved, his smile radiant in the afternoon sun. She managed to wave back, her hand trembling. That evening, she met Matteo at their usual spot, a small pizzeria where the owner, Don Carlos, always saved them the corner table. The smell of grilling meat and chimichurri usually made her mouth water, but tonight her stomach churned with dread. "You're quiet tonight," Matteo observed, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "Bad day at the cafe." "Something like that." She forced a smile, memorizing his face, the way his dark eyes crinkled when he was concerned, the small scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood accident he told her about, the gentle strength in his calloused fingers. "Actually, I have good news," he said, his face lighting up. "I got approved for overtime this month, and with the extra money, I can finally afford." He pulled out a small velvet box, worn and obviously second-hand, but his hands shook with nervous excitement. Valentina's heart stopped. "Valin, I know we haven't been together long, but I've never felt anything like this. You make me want to be better, to build something real. He opened the box, revealing a simple silver ring with a small diamond that probably cost him months of savings. I can't give you luxury or grand gestures, but I can give you my whole heart. Will you marry me? The word shattered something inside her chest. This beautiful, honest man was offering her everything he had, and she'd built their entire relationship on lies. Mateo, Valentina Mendoza. The sharp voice cut through the restaurant like a blade. Santiago Herrera stood in the doorway, immaculate in his tailored suit, flanked by 2 security guards. Every head in the small parilla turned to stare. There you are, mi amor. Your father is worried sick. The silence that followed was deafening. Mateo's face went white, then red, then white again as understanding crashed over him like a tidal wave. Mendoza, he whispered, the ring box still open in his hands. As in, Eduardo Mendoza. Sigh, exactly, Santiago said with a cruel smile, approaching their table. Allow me to introduce Valentina Mendoza, heir to the largest fortune in Argentina. Though I must say, darling, this whole slumming experiment is rather dramatic, even for you. The other diners began whispering, phones appearing to capture the scene. Don Carlos stood frozen behind the counter, his kind face creased with confusion. Mateo's eyes never left her face. Tell me it's not true. She opened her mouth, but no words came. The lies she'd rehearsed, the explanations she'd crafted in sleepless nights, all of it crumbled under the weight of his devastated gaze. Valin, he said, his voice breaking on the nickname that had become her favorite sound in the world. Tell me you're not Eduardo Mendoza's daughter. A single tear rolled down her cheek. I can't. The ring box snapped shut with finality. Mateo stood so abruptly his chair fell backward, the crash echoing through the now silent restaurant. 3 months, he said, his voice hollow. 3 months of lies. Did you think it was funny? Did you and your rich friends laugh about the stupid construction worker who thought he was good enough for a billionaire? No, Mateo, please. I told you I loved your heart, he said, backing away from her as if she were poisonous. But how can I love something I never really knew? He threw money on the table, probably his last pesos, and walked out into the Buenos Aires night. The door's slam reverberated through Valentina's soul. Santiago slid into Mateo's vacated chair, smirking. Well, that was entertaining. Shall we go home now? Your father is hosting dinner for the Japanese investors tonight. She stared at the door through which Mateo had vanished, her future dissolving like sugar in rain. Around her, the restaurant buzzed with whispered conversations and camera phones. By morning, her photograph would be all over social media. Billionaire heiress's secret slum life exposed. I'm not going anywhere, she said quietly. Pardon. She stood, her legs unsteady but her voice growing stronger. I said I'm not going anywhere. Not with you, not with your security guards, not back to that golden prison. Santiago's confident expression wavered. Don't be ridiculous, Valentina. This little rebellion is over. No, she said, louder now, drawing stares from the entire restaurant. It's just beginning. Have you ever had to choose between the life you were born into and the life you truly want? Do you think Mateo can ever forgive Valentina's deception, or are some betrayals too deep to heal? Share your thoughts below. She pushed past Santiago and his guards, ignoring their attempts to follow. Outside, the streets of La Boca had never looked more beautiful or more foreign. This neighborhood that had become home now felt like another lie. She didn't belong here any more than she belonged in Recoleta. Her phone buzzed incessantly. Her father, Santiago, society reporters who'd somehow gotten her number. She turned it off and kept walking. By dawn, she found herself at the Puerto Madero waterfront, watching the sun rise over the Rio de la Plata. The same sun that had risen over her and Mateo on that rooftop, when she believed love might be enough to bridge any gap. She thought of his words, "It's your heart I love. Everything else is just details." But what if her heart was the lie? What if she'd become so lost in pretending to be Valin Silva that she'd forgotten who Valentina Mendoza really was? A text message from an unknown number made her hands shake. I kept the ring. Not because I still want to marry you, but because I need to remember what it feels like to be played for a fool. Don't contact me again. M. The message hit harder than her father's anger or Santiago's smugness. This was the cost of her deception, not just losing Matteo, but destroying his ability to trust, to hope, to believe in love. She had wanted to find out if someone could love her for who she really was. Instead, she'd proven that she didn't even know who that person was anymore. But as she stood watching the sunrise paint Buenos Aires in shades of gold and possibility, something crystallized in her chest. She might not know who she was, but she knew who she wanted to become. And that person, the real Valentina, was going to fight for the love she'd thrown away, even if it took the rest of her life to prove she was worthy of it. The final act was about to begin. 6 months after the night her world exploded at Don Carlos Pereira, Valentina sat in a lawyer's office in downtown Buenos Aires, signing papers that would change everything. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Señorita Mendoza?" the elderly attorney asked, his weathered hand shuffling through documents worth billions of pesos. "Once these trusts are established, you'll have access to only a modest living allowance until you're 35. "I'm certain." Her signature was steady now, confident in a way it had never been when she was signing charity gala programs or country club memberships. "The majority of my inheritance goes to the Fundación Corazón Abierto, specifically for affordable housing projects, community centers, and educational programs in working-class neighborhoods." The months since that devastating night had been the hardest of her life, but also the most clarifying. She'd moved into a genuine modest apartment in San Telmo. No more pretending, no more lies. She'd enrolled in social work courses at the Universidad de Buenos Aires, using her real name, enduring the stares and whispers of classmates who recognized her from the tabloid headlines. Mendoza heiress goes loca. Billionaire's daughter abandons fortune. From penthouse to poorhouse, the Valentina Mendoza story. Let them talk. She was done living her life for other people's opinions. Her father had raged, threatened, pleaded, and finally, in a moment of rare vulnerability, wept. "You're all I have left, Mija. Don't throw away everything I built for you." "I'm not throwing it away, Papa. I'm using it the way Mama would have wanted. She always said money was just a tool, it's what you build with it that matters." Eduardo Mendoza was many things, but he wasn't stupid. Eventually, he'd recognized the steel in his daughter's voice, the same determination that had built his empire, and grudgingly respected her choice, even if he didn't understand it. Santiago Herrera had moved on quickly to a banking heiress from Córdoba, confirming everything Valentina had suspected about his affections. But Matteo remained a wound that wouldn't heal. She tried to respect his wishes and stay away, but La Boca was a small neighborhood, and she caught glimpses of him sometimes. He'd grown thinner, more serious. The easy laughter she'd fallen in love with seemed dimmed. Jorge at the cafe told her that Matteo had quit his volunteer work at the community center. "The boy's heart is broken," the old man said sadly. "Some hurts cut too deep for time alone to heal." Today marked exactly 6 months since she'd started rebuilding her life from the ground up. She'd chosen this anniversary for a reason. The construction site in Villa 31 buzzed with activity under the afternoon sun. Cranes lifted steel beams into place while workers in hard hats moved with purposeful efficiency. The sign at the entrance read, "Complejo Habitacional Esperanza, Fundación Corazón Abierto." Valentina wore jeans, work boots, and a yellow hard hat, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. No designer clothes, no security detail, no pretense. Just her, a clipboard, and a determination to see this project through. Señorita Mendoza. The site foreman approached, his face respectful but wary. "The engineering consultant you requested is here." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Send him over." She turned toward the half-constructed building, trying to steady her breathing. Through 6 months of planning this affordable housing complex, she'd insisted on hiring the best engineering consultant for the project. It had taken 3 intermediaries and a hefty consulting fee to convince him to take the job without knowing who his client was. "You wanted to see me." The voice she'd heard in her dreams stopped her cold. She turned slowly, drinking in the sight of him, still beautiful, still strong, but with new lines around his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and guarded hope. Matteo stood 20 feet away, his own hard hat in his hands, professional confusion clear on his face. When their eyes met, the confusion shattered into something rawer. "Hello, Matteo." For a long moment, neither moved. The construction noise faded to background static as they stared at each other across the divide of hurt and time. "You hired me," he said finally. "It wasn't a question." I hired the best engineer in Buenos Aires who specializes in affordable housing. The fact that it's you is..." She swallowed hard. "The fact that it's you gives me hope that maybe we want the same things." He looked around at the construction site. Dozens of workers building homes for families who'd never owned anything before, playgrounds where children could learn and grow, community spaces designed to bring people together instead of keeping them apart. "This is your foundation. This is what I chose to do with my life." She stepped closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in his brown eyes. "I can't change the fact that I lied to you. I can't take back the hurt I caused. But I can show you who I really am when everything fake is stripped away." "And who is that?" "Someone who learned what love really means from a man who teaches children to play guitar. Someone who discovered that home isn't a place, it's a feeling you get when someone sees your soul and chooses to stay." Her voice broke slightly. "Someone who's been building this project for 6 months, hoping that maybe, someday, you might forgive me enough to help me get it right." Matteo walked to the architectural plans spread on a nearby table, studying the blueprints with professional focus. She watched him trace the lines of the community center, the school, the affordable apartments designed with dignity and beauty, not just functionality. "These are good plans," he said quietly. "Really good. The person who designed this understands what working families need." "I had an excellent teacher." She joined him at the table. "He taught me that everyone deserves a beautiful place to call home. The playground here," he pointed to a section of the blueprint. "This design would be perfect for the kids from the community center. I was hoping you might help them use it. I mean, if you ever decide to volunteer again." He looked up sharply, and she saw a flicker of the man who'd proposed to her with trembling hands and a second-hand ring. "You know I stopped. Jorge told me. He also told me that Sophia asks about you every day, and that the reading program hasn't been the same since you left." She touched his hand gently. "They need you, Matteo. Those kids need someone who believes in them the way you made me believe in myself." "You broke my heart," he said simply, no accusation in his voice, just truth. "I know. I spent 3 months hating you. 3 more trying to forget you." He turned his hand palm up, intertwining their fingers. "Turns out 6 months isn't nearly long enough for either. I spent 6 months trying to become someone worthy of your love." She looked at their joined hands, his still calloused from honest work, hers marked with small cuts from learning to build things instead of just buying them. "I don't know if I succeeded, but I know who I am now. Not Eduardo Mendoza's daughter, not an heiress, not a trust fund. Just Valentina. The woman who loves you more than her next breath and will spend the rest of her life proving it, if you'll let her." "The ring," he said suddenly. "What?" "I kept the ring. I told you it was to remember being played for a fool, but..." He reached into his pocket, pulling out the small velvet box she remembered so vividly. "I kept it because I was hoping someday I'd find out the woman I proposed to was real." "She was real," Valentina whispered. "She was the realest I'd ever been." "Then maybe..." He opened the box, the small diamond catching the afternoon light. "Maybe we could try again. Not Matteo and the heiress, not the construction worker and the billionaire. Just us." "Just us," she agreed, tears streaming down her face as he slipped the ring onto her finger. The same ring, but somehow completely different because this time, there were no lies between them. The construction workers around them began to cheer and whistle, apparently having been watching the drama unfold. Matteo laughed, the first time she'd seen him truly laugh in 6 months, and pulled her into his arms. "I love you, Valentina," he said against her hair. "The real you. All of you. Even the trust fund part. Especially the trust fund part, since you're using it to build homes for people who need them." He pulled back to look at her face. "Though I have to ask, can you actually afford me as your consulting engineer? My rates are pretty high." She grinned, feeling lighter than air. "I think I can manage." "Do you believe in second chances when love is real? Have you ever had to choose between who you were and who you wanted to become? Tell us about your journey in the comments below." The wedding was small, family, close friends, and most of the neighborhood children from the community center, who served as an enthusiastic, if chaotic, wedding party. They held it in the courtyard of Complejo Habitational Esperanza, surrounded by the homes they'd built together. Valentina wore her mother's dress, altered to fit her smaller frame and simpler style. Matteo wore a suit Jorge had insisted on buying him. Every groom needs at least one perfect day, the old man had declared. Don Carlos catered the reception with the same empanadas and chimichurri from their first date. Sophia, now 10 and reading at grade level thanks to the expanded literacy programs, gave a speech about how Tia Valin and Tio Matteo taught me that love means helping people grow. Eduardo Mendoza walked his daughter down the aisle with tears in his eyes. He'd come to understand that sometimes loving someone means letting them become who they're meant to be, even if it's not who you expected. He'd also discovered that having a son-in-law who could actually build things was surprisingly useful for a man in the construction business. As the sun set over Buenos Aires, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Valentina and Matteo danced their first dance as husband and wife to the sound of children's laughter and the distant melody of tango music drifting from the streets of La Boca. No regrets. Matteo whispered as they swayed together. Only one, she murmured against his chest. What's that? I wish I'd been brave enough to tell you the truth from the beginning. We could have had 2 more years together. Maybe, he said, spinning her gently. Or maybe we both needed to become who we were meant to be before we could really love each other. She looked up at her husband, her best friend, her partner in building something beautiful from the ground up, the man who'd taught her that home wasn't a place but a person, and knew he was right. Sometimes love isn't about finding someone who accepts your masks. Sometimes it's about finding someone worth removing them for. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that someone will love the face underneath even more than the performance you've been giving the world. The last rays of sunlight caught her simple wedding ring as she reached up to cup Matteo's face, and Valentina Mendoza, now Valentina Silva, knew she was finally, truly home. What does home mean to you? Is it a place, a person, or something else entirely? Share your thoughts and let us know what you think about Valentina and Matteo's journey from deception to authentic love. Thanks for watching till the end. We know you loved this story, and there are many more thrilling ones waiting for you. Just click on the video on your screen to dive into the next chapter.